anything that really occurred back in those times, the history that we were taught. That's another mark for the older people. They understand the sweep of history. They understand decade after decade after decade of the ongoing evolution of the experiment called the United States. But the older people have one thing that really holds them back. They're running out of gas. Unfortunately, the enzymes and the hormones that are produced that allow very, very high levels of biochemical reactions and therefore vitality are slowly winding down with the aging process and the tremendous pressure that people in the middle age and younger old age have been subjected to has finally caught up with their body and entwined itself in the muscle structure, the neural structure, to the point that they simply are becoming dysfunctional. And so therefore, just out of default, the country is being taken over by younger people who don't have anywhere near the capabilities, but do have the physiological capabilities of continuing on. But now we have something else that's going on here that's entirely different. On one hand, we have a biochemical revolution where certain age-increasing drugs, which of course are being, as they're discovered, are being, the drug companies are being rewarded by it because a lot of the money is in the hands of older people. And so there's a tremendous drive for age-increasing drugs, machines, things of that nature, procedures that allow people to live to an older and older period. The only problem is this is going crosswise with the government, who simply cannot afford a population that's aging and would really rather euthanize you after you retire if they really had their choice. And the way that euthanasia is going to occur is not through anything obvious and direct, but by simply removing capabilities in a system where medical care is going to be rationed out because it'll be a socialist system. It's inevitable that will occur because the government is simply running out of money and cannot continue on with medical procedures. So how can this aged group, with all this capability, with all this stored up enthusiasm and knowledge and all the things that are necessary to be excellent on an ongoing basis and be more than competitive and to be, in fact, be superior if they had the strength to be able to pull it off? Well, the way it's going to happen is these older people are going to discover ways of making themselves vital without using standard medicine and the expense that's involved in it. And essentially, in many cases, the questionable capability of increasing the quality of life. As I've mentioned to you before, certainly one area will probably end up being things like they do in China, like Tai Chi and things like that, just rhythmically moving bodies, people allowing themselves to go to a more relaxed mental state, maybe even unwinding the tension that occurs as time goes along. Other technologies may occur where diseases are simply eliminated electronically like they are in Europe right now. And this type of treatment is expanding very rapidly in Europe because it's so unbelievably cost effective. There's no doubt that eventually it will reach here. And then there is another thing that's going on that's going to be absolutely fantastic, and I believe that it's going to be distance energy and actually increasing the vitality of people far beyond their normal ages. Now, let me give you an example. I know for a fact, having worked with a large number of people, that the auric envelope definitely weakens as people get older. This puts stress on the body to be able to continue to function as a young, vital person. If that auric envelope is built up to a very, very high level, which I'd like to think that we have the capability of doing, the auric envelope, almost an auric amniotic sac, allows people to draw off the energy of the envelope and function without stressing the body or depleting it. And what this enables older people to do then in that case is function on a very, very normal basis by allowing all their faculties to continue to operate without drawing down on themselves physically or being stressed physically by the drawing away of energy or simply the lack of it as a person gets older. The second thing is the water. I believe the water is making very, very large differences in the energy content of people's of things that people ingest. Obviously, we need to have food. We need to have water. But the Bible tells us to pray over the food and pray over the water. Why? In my opinion, one of the reasons the Bible tells us to do that, because we energize the food by praying on it. We actually give it spiritual vitality. And so in a sense, one of the things that we're doing is producing spiritual vitality in water and in food. And what this, of course, does is allowed you not only to have your, let's say, etheric amniotic sac energized, but also your internal capabilities energized by the food you ingest as well. So not only are you increasing your capabilities etherically, but also physically. And this is bound to have a highly energizing effect over a period of time and may very well allow persons to live a lot longer. So let's make a theoretical assumption here, just for the fun of it. Let's make the assumption that what we're doing here has the capability of allowing people to age at a much more leisurely pace, allows them to have spirituality at a much higher level, allows them to have an intuitive leaps and capacities at a much more advanced level than they ever could before. Why, then, would a younger person be superior? As a matter of fact, why wouldn't a younger person be inferior in competing against a person like this, a super old person? Now, just so you think this isn't inconceivable, you can remember older societies, where a guy that was 60, 65 years old with a long gray beard was revered by the rest of the tribe because he could tell them about floods and pestilence and all the things that occurred before that the 20-year-olds had never experienced. And so he was utilized because of his tremendous, or he or she were utilized because of their tremendous knowledge, not only of remembering experiences, but also their knowledge of drugs, herbs, things that will allow people to survive better, the production of weapons possibly, the making of spear points. All these things were technology that were passed on by older, more experienced people, the younger, less experienced people that needed it as their survival skill. I think that there's a very good chance that that's the type of thing that's happening right now with programs like ours. People are actually getting the capacity to not have to be retired for a long, long time. Let me give you an example. So I'm over at the coffee shop today. I'm sitting there, and this guy talks to me occasionally. I think he's a civil engineer. He worked in water treatment plants. This guy's 70 years old. He looks like he's been run over by a truck. His eyes are baggy. His face is all kind of red and blotchy. He walks with a limp. He looks like he's working on about 2 out of 8 cylinders. And I said, just for curiosity, Dave, why did you retire? When did you retire? He says, well, I retired about 2 years ago. Well, it was because everybody had gone past. He says, no. He says, I knew a lot more than the guys who were running the place. He said, I just thought it was time to pass on the baton to somebody else. In other words, he'd run out of gas. And I said, well, let me ask you this. Do these people know some of the things that you've come up with and the experiences you've had? Or are they going to have to relearn it all themselves? He says, well, I left them with as much as I could, but there's no way they can come up with the kind of experiences I have without having to relive them themselves. There are just a lot of things that you don't teach in books. Case in point, perfect. Now let's take this guy and say that at 70 years old he didn't retire. Let's say he was able to continue on to 80, 85, or 90 as a completely viable entity. Think of the capabilities. I said, let me ask you something, Dave. Were you still learning a lot about your job even when you retired? He said, yes. Absolutely. He says, there's always something to learn. So here's a guy that not only had a tremendous amount of knowledge, but was continuing to intellectually progress as time went on, even up to the day that he retired. Well, let's take me, for instance. Okay, I'm 63, as I mentioned. I developed the technology when I was 59. The technology is being perfected all the time, and I'll bet you if you talk to Kevin, he would say that my mind works very fast.